Ijeoma Egwuatu's criminal cases and immigration records cannot be released till 2026 due to unusual circumstances. DSS suggests Emefiele has links with IPOB as lawyers initiate a contempt case against DSS Director General. NNPCL explains reason for pump price increase to 617 naira per litre. And on the foreign scene, Trump says he expects indictments in January 6 probe. Details now. Thank you for staying with us. The World News at 6 begins in the health sector, where stakeholders have called for a sensitization to erode the stigma surrounding cases of infertility. The medical director and chief executive officer of Clearview Hospitals and Fertility Clinic, Lekki, Dr. Kunle Ajayi, who spoke to journalists during a 6th anniversary celebration and clinic tour today, tagged Celebrating a Legacy of Trust, also urged the federal government to consider a reduction or total erosion of tax on medical equipment and consumables to ease and enhance health services to citizens. Speaking further, he urged Nigerians to beware of fraudulent fertility clinics and practices, even as he lamented the constant migration of qualified medical practitioners to other climes. He urged couples seeking fertility treatments in Nigeria to opt for solutions within the country, as in his words, there is nothing obtainable outside that Nigeria does not offer right now. Let's take a listen to Dr. Kunle Ajayi of Clearview Fertility Clinic speaking today.
Ajayi. I'm a consultant, obstetrician and gynecologist, and a reproductive medicine expert. I am the medical director of Clearview Hospital and Fertility Clinics. So we offer obstetrics and gynecology services, so we treat women basically, but we also treat children, you know. So as part of our services, we do things like gynecological surgeries. We do keyhole surgeries, you know, laparoscopy, and hysteroscopy, and other things. We also offer fertility services, and I mean, it's from basic fertility up to the level of IVF. So then, of course, we have pediatric services, you know. But the reason for the celebration is, I mean, it's our 6th year, and we are celebrating a legacy of trust. Trusts from our patients, trust from our clients, trust from people that refer patients to us, even trust from our competitors, because it's been, I mean, not Nigerian, the Nigerian environment is such that if you are not resilient and if you're not doing the right thing, most likely you'll be pushed out within the first year. But I mean, we've gotten to 6 years and we're not just thriving, we're actually growing to provide more services. As you can see, where we are now is a new facility, is a new branch, Clearview Hospital and Fertility. So in a typical year, we are doing close to 200 cycles now. 200 cycles means every month we are doing close to 20, you know, cycles. And in a year, our typical success rate can vary between 40 and 60%, depending on what you know we do. And it's something I'm very, very proud to discuss, you know. And as at today, and the number of babies, I'm sure we don't have less than 300 babies now.
In his submission, consultant embryologist Olajide Wilson spoke on the preservation of fertility, eggs, embryos, and ovarian tissues, which can be used in later years for in vitro fertilization, IVF. Let's take a listen to him.
My name is Olajide Wilson. I'm an embryologist with over 15 years work experience in the IVF industry. So when you're talking about preservation of fertility, which includes preservation of eggs, preservations of embryos, and preservation of sperm, even ovarian tissue. So if you ask, can a woman preserve their fertility? Yes, they can. So what happened is they are going to go through the normal IVF route, whereby they are stimulated to produce eggs, and after the eggs has been produced, they are cryopreserved. That is, they are frozen. And for men, maybe for one reason, the person is having cancer treatment before the procedure starts, they can actually preserve, store the sperm and keep away before the treatment of radiation or chemotherapy starts, which eventually will affect their, which will actually affect the male fertility organ. The same way also for women. You know that immediately they are crossing 35 years, they rapidly lose their fertility status starts decreasing rapidly. So it is also advisable when you are approaching 30, when you cross the mark of 30, and you are actually probably a career person or you've not gotten the right person, you can cryopreserve your eggs, which you can use subsequently at 40 or above, when your eggs might not be that viable again. So you can actually go back to the frozen eggs and use them for true IVF procedures to achieve pregnancy.
On her part, human resources consultant and life coach Mrs. Adekpeju Adegoke applauded the clinic's achievement in staff development in the past 6 years, as the establishment had sent its heads of department on a leadership course outside the country recently. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department and Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, have cited unusual circumstances for refusing to release President Bola Tinubu's criminal and immigration records in their possession to the public until 2026. Following a Freedom of Information request, the U.S. authorities said even if they were to release the records, it would be at least until January 2026 before they could do so. A civil lawsuit has now been filed over the matter before Judge Beryl Howell of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. The filings came as the president maintained in court that he did not commit any crimes during his decades-long residency in the United States. Now joining me to discuss this and the other issues on the world news at 6 this evening, we have Mr. Awa Omiko of the Sunday Editorial Desk. Good evening, Mr. Awa. Thank you for joining me today.
Good evening. How are you, sir? How are you, man?
I'm very well, thank you.
You know, there's no lady in the journalism, so you are a sir.
Thank you, Mr. Omiko. Thank you for joining me. So we have, a development, or should I say, a developing story right here. The United States State Department and its Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's the FBI, have said due to unusual circumstances, they cannot release President Bola Tinubu's criminal or immigration records in their possession until the year 2026. Now, they did not say what these reasons are, and the reason why they're coming out to say this is because an American public disclosure activist, Aaron Greenspan, had filed a request to the FBI, to the State Department, to the Department of Treasury, and even the Drug Enforcement Administration, amongst others. He was asking for an urgent release of any of President Tinubu's immigration or criminal records in their possession. And now they are saying they cannot disclose this until 2026. 2026 is about 3 years away. By that time, the president's administration would have been rounding off. We do know that right now the Election Petition Tribunal is handling the case of identity, the case of criminal records against the president right now. And the president has said that, look, this identity, even when they said, oh, the Bola Tinubu that attended Chicago University was a female, even when they talked about the forfeiture of $460,000, so many things that he has denied. If the United States really has this in their possession, and even with the Freedom of Information suits brought against them, they have still refused to release this to the public. What really does this say to us? Are they hiding something, or are they shielding the president from something?
Yeah, it's not a matter of shading the president. It is in fact, the whole thing has to come in a multifaceted forms and for multifaceted reasons. In the first place, the FOOI you mentioned, that is Freedom of Information, has its own limitations. And one of the limitations is that there is an exclusive secret, state secret. No, that's an exclusive secret which they cannot reveal until certain things, until certain conditions are met. And that's what is known as state interest. I think the US government knew too well of all these two peculiarities and decided to say, by the nature of the African politics and polity, by the nature of Nigerian ethnic orientation, setting, and graduation and aggregation when it comes to issues. That is why they say they are not releasing anything, because they know when they do, it's going to fracture the Nigerian system. You will see uprisings here and there, and that is why they are saying for state interest and for their own interest too, because they know when Nigeria boils, the first place the first country Nigerians will go to is the US, and for that reason, they want to say, okay, we don't want the crowd to come to the US.
Is that to say they are helping us to help themselves?
It's a diplomatic way of safeguarding themselves and keeping us to away. Yes, it's a diplomatic way of saying no, we can't do this. It's a diplomatic way of saying, since they have elected him, let him remain. And it's a systematic way of keeping us under the bondage, under their own bondage. Another way to look at it is that since Bola Tinubu knows that these people have his own secret, it's just a way of pulling the string. Look, Mr. President, now dance to our tune, or else we'll release it. It could be a way of pulling him to dance to the tune of the US. And mind you, in international politics, these countries are not just there to help you. They're there for their own interests, and which is selfish. They're there for their own interest. They will use it. If you look at the politics and what has been happening in the West Indies and the Latin America, you know that the U.S. government uses information against the people, against the government in power. So for other reasons, one, it is to guide the Nigerian state from fracturing. Two, it is to safeguard their own interest in the country, because when Nigeria boils, their own interest will be destructured. And again, you should know that the country, the world at large is sick. Russia is looking for an ally, and Ukraine, and you know all that. So they don't want to bring in another power that will join the forces in the world to attack the U.S. interest. So it's a diplomatic thing, and you can look at it from diverse forms. So people don't really know the role Nigeria plays, because Nigeria is a big power in Africa. And if anything happens to Nigeria, it means most of the countries in Africa will bleed. And they don't want that bleeding, and that is why they are nipping it at the board.
Okay, on the one hand, Mr. Omiko, one would think if those records actually contained something positive, they wouldn't hesitate to, put it out. They wouldn't hesitate to bring it out when it is asked for like this, especially in a suit, because they've been approached and saying, okay, let's see this thing. It had to go to the court, and then even the court is saying, it's saying something, but yet the departments keep saying that they cannot release it. One would think if what is there is something positive, if it is, would I say, what Nigerians want to hear, if it's not an indictment, would they not be quick to show it to the world? Would they not be quick to show it to Nigerians to say, look, what you're accusing him of, he did not do it?
No, you don't just say that. We don't have to be, in this case, we don't have to be judgmental. By saying the information will be negative, it means we are being judgmental. And we don't have the local standee to do that. The only people that will tell you that this is what we have, or this is that, the record is this, is that, is the US government that at a point in time known him too well that most of us did not do. I think what the government, or what those that have been trying Bola Tinubu should have done, is just to have applied to seek on FOI to get this information before now. If they can do it, yes. If they had done it, it would have worked. But now, I tell you, go to the histories and see what that has happened to the governments of Latin America and see how America has installed and removed. I bet you by tomorrow, if Bola Tinubu refuses to dance a different song from that being sung by the US government, you will see what will happen to Nigeria. So you can see that he's still a pet, and they're using that as a thread, as a rope to control him. Nigeria is a big economy, and nobody there toys with us. We are like the beautiful bride. All these countries are just looking at us. Any little mistake, you see, we lose its trend. Now, American system, and that is why they are doing what they're doing. It's not a matter of trying to protect Bola Tinubu. It's a matter of their state interest, and it's a matter of let us not restructure this for our own interest. The oil sector, our economy, the marketing structure, the population, and everything we have, that's around the U.S. government. Even how many countries use the dollar more than we? So it is for their own interest. So it is a selfish interest. And that is why they say, let us leave it until the period, until it runs out of his period. I believe you me, if the lawyers have been fast enough, that is, most of us don't even think ahead. It's unfortunate for our legal luminaries. They don't think ahead. They would have done this before now. But now, it's gone, and that's been it. Hello?
I'm with you, Mr. Omiko. But then,
yes.
on the other hand, we can see, how do you think, in your own view, this will impact, the case already sitting at the tribunal? Because one would say this could have helped the tribunal's case in determining whether for or against his election to the seat of power, to the seat of the president.
Look, that case is going to be knocked out on technical grounds. It's going to be knocked out on technical grounds. Because almost the people that don't have the local stability to even try the case in the first place. You are not bringing an issue of personality and of impersonation and of money laundering and of so many. And all this needs to be, you have to articulate it and bring out your facts the way it should be. And most of those facts they are bringing out don't have enough weight and can't flow. If you say went to the person that went to that Chicago was a woman, bring the woman and let us see the facts. Don't just say the facts are there. Where are they? Table it before the law. If you must come with to equity, you must come with clean hands. Present your facts. I'm not saying I support crime and criminality. But the truth is that let there be a precedent so that by tomorrow, when it happens to somebody else, it will be shown. You can see the case of the Buhari Gates in the House of the Speaker, former Speaker. You can see the case of Evans and Ewerem, and you can see others like that. They all had this document, and it was presented before the people. In the Buhari's case, the Tinubu's case seems to be too political and too dicey in the sense that the man has the intellectual of lawyers and legal luminaries that can actually fight for him. If the legal system, if our structure here, if our legal system, if our institutions here are strong, we could force the U.S. government to do that. But because the institutions here are not strong, and that is why the U.S. government on this one is leveraging on that to tell us that they cannot release it. Because there are other ways we could force the U.S. government to release those information. If you ask me, I will refer our economy, I will refer the people back to 1979, I think 80 or 84, when Ebola Akinyemi was an ambassador. And the UK government wanted us to do something, I think to change our currency or about the economy. And Bola Tinubu said, and Professor Akinyemi then said, no, Margaret Thatcher, go back to your country. This is what we're going to do in Nigeria. If you're telling us no, we too will say no to the U.S. I could see that was then some of the things, some of the properties in UK properties in Nigeria, that some of the companies were easily named. And the problem of it, the law of indigenization was actually visiting those things. And that forced UK government to come and negotiate for the case of Nigeria. But in like this time, we are not a military government, and mind you, we are multifaceted, and there are so many politics going around that doesn't even want the truth to be out. And this is what the US government is now begging to say. These people are not united enough to have this information. Let us keep it. And I believe you me, based on my understanding of the US government, they are going to use this information to make sure that Nigeria dances to their tune. And a plain example is examples we have in the Latin America and in other parts of the world, where the U.S. government will systematically be using information. Even in the Russia-Ukraine war, some of those information they are using against Putin. So you just look at it, it's for our own state interest. And that is where we have found ourselves. And until we stand to say this is not going to happen, I doubt if it will change. And I doubt how many people will stick out their neck to say it will not happen. How many institutions? We don't have them. And until that, we keep on valuing in darkness. May God help us all.
All right, Mr. Omiko, thank you so much. Just before you leave, I would like to quickly touch on this issue. A group of human rights lawyers yesterday initiated contempt action against the Director General of the Department of State Services, DSS, Mr. Yusuf Bichi, due to what they call their dissatisfaction with the arrest and prolonged detention of the suspended governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele. The legal practitioners who were led by Mr. Maxwell Okpara and Ahmed Tijani accused the DSS boss of disobeying subsisting court judgments regarding Emefiele's arrest. They also said the group would pursue the matter to its logical conclusion with a view to ensuring that the public offices are not used for personal vendetta. Now, in a response, on what could be called a response, the DSS today suggested that the embattled CBN governor has a connection with the separatists, the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. One of Emefiele's lawyers, according to the DSS, the DSS says one of Emefiele's lawyer, Maxwell Okpara, is also the legal representative of IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu, who is currently, facing treason and terrorism charges against the Nigerian government. If this is the reason why the DSS is saying Emefiele might have IPOB links, does it mean that a legal practitioner is limited in the amount of people that they can represent so that their interests are not misconstrued?
Well, the issue of saying Emefiele IPOB is a misguided and misdirected thing. They just want to frame one thing against it. So that was definitely the general of the government. The answer remains no. Was the head of state? The answer remains no. They said they were running the economy. The answer remains no. People may say because it was the governor that was directly involved in the economy. But the answer remains no. He wasn't only the one. How about the cabal that helps the government? Where are they? So it's just a way of letting aspect. It's a distraction. It's a distraction and the way of seeking for Nigerian sympathy for what the security agencies, let me use the word agencies, they have committed. So it's just going to say, when we know that it is to do it, Nigerians will say yes, it is well deserved. That is rubbish. No. The lawyers themselves know this. But my worry is that at times these so-called learned friends or luminaries, I wonder where they come from. Do they not learn from history? I wonder. I begin to wonder at times. This is just a mere discussion of the totality of the crime in its own. And this is a mere discussion. So that let us put this man on IPOB. Yes, my time is focused on IPOB, and money laundering and all that. People will see yes, he's there. And believe me, Mr. President, Tinubu has a hand in it. It is more or less like a vendetta. Let's not say about everything. One of the reasons of changing of Naira design was to thwart some of this money back from coming into politics. It was to thwart the intentions because they already have fees and rules for keeping money. And they felt that these people have enough money to share around. Let us spoil their game plan. And now, the people they thought they are spoiling their game plan has now entered into government and want to hunt them back. So it's let us forget about it. What has Jacob got to do with Emefiele? Who is Emefiele in the circle of IPOP?
Right.
Okay, we could have as well said Emefiele was the one that sponsored SARS. Or we could have as well said Emefiele has been the one sponsoring all the whole military and terrorist act against Africa, Nigeria and West Africa. So it's unfounded. It's a lame duck excuse. Let them look for something else.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Omiko. Unfortunately, I would need to interrupt you because of time. All right. Are you with me, Mr. Omiko? Thank you. Thank you so dearly for joining me on the World News at 6. Thank you. In another development, the federal government has scrapped plans to distribute a monthly cash of 8,000 naira to 12 million households as part of efforts to cushion the effects of the fuel subsidy removal. According to reports, sources in the villa confirmed the reversal, citing concerns over the ability of the cash distribution to meet the administration's goal of supporting the poor in the country, grappling with the resultant price hike following the termination of the subsidy regime. Instead, the administration is set to increase the country's minimum wage, a long-standing demand of Nigeria's labor union. The increment is expected to jack up the earnings of millions of Nigerians and provide succor amid the palpable rise in the cost of living. Meanwhile, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Mele Kyari, has attributed the rise in petrol pump prices in Nigeria to market forces. This follows a recent price increase from 540 naira to 617 naira per litre, which he said reflects the dynamics of a market-regulated pricing model. However, he debunks the notion that the price increase is due to a shortfall in petrol subsidy. As he said, the country still has over 32 days of fuel supply. On his part, the CEO of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, Farouk Ahmed, attributed the price hike to global crude oil price rises. He also mentioned that changes in freight costs and other miscellaneous expenses that importers encounter during distribution contribute to price changes. On the foreign scene, Donald Trump has said he expects to be arrested by a federal inquiry into the U.S. Capitol riot and efforts to challenge the 2020 election results. The former U.S. president said in a social media post that he had been informed by special counsel Jack Smith on Sunday night that he was a target of their investigation. Trump posted that he was told by reports to a grand jury, which he said almost always means an arrest, an indictment. Such an indictment will be Trump's third for alleged criminal offenses, including 37 counts brought by Mr. Smith's team in June, accusing the former president of mishandling classified documents. He is due to stand trial in that case next March, while the date for the classified document case is still being contested by the president's lawyers. And that's it on the World News at 6. Just before we wrap up, here are the top stories again. NNPCL has explained the reason for the pump price increase to 617 naira per litre. The FBI and the State Department says President Tinubu's criminal cases and immigration records cannot be released till 2026 due to unusual circumstances. The DSS has suggested that Emefiele has links with IPOB as lawyers initiate a contempt case against the DSS Director General. And on the foreign scene, Trump says he expects indictment in a January 6 probe. And that's it on the World News at 6. My name is Ijeoma Innocent. Please follow our social media handles at VOP903FM. For coverage of your live events and brand news mentions on the news bulletins, do send a mail to news@voiceofthepeople.ng. Good evening and thank you for listening.